So here's the big video. And by big video, I mean I can't keep putting it off forever, and I am nowhere near done with all the research I want to do on the topic. But here is this video. I finally, after a long period of time and a lot of effort, got diagnosed with autism at the age of lovely 30, which seems to be the online trend. Seems to be a lot of people, right as soon as they hit their 30s, either just get burnt out or suddenly find themselves finding themselves. So in this video, if you just want the TLDR about what I'm going to go over in not too much detail, because I haven't done enough research to satisfy my opinion that I've done enough research, I'm going to talk about how I got where I am, like how I got the diagnosis, what I actually went through to do it, what the process was like, but not like spoiling the testing, which is not advisable, why I wanted it, what you might not want a diagnosis for, what am I going to do now, what even is autism, what is it like being autistic. That's my cat Thor. Actually, no, that's Balder. He's the lanky one. And like what's next after all this, because I don't really talk too much about neurodivergence on the channel. At least I haven't thus far. I have done a bit, but it's mostly been about ADHD and more about how that ties in with all of this. So if you're interested in this whole garbled mess about neurodivergence and the insanity of the US healthcare system and what daily life is like for somebody with, who is autistic and has ADHD, stay tuned for that. This is going to be a fun ride. Okay, what led me here? So I've known I've been ADHD for ever. My dad has it. He's been on medication for it since I was a little kid, and kind of just my parents knew and never like formally got me diagnosed. Never got me on medication as a kid, which retrospectively would have been very helpful. A lot of interesting stuff around that with like Dr. Huberman podcasts I've been listening to about neuroplasticity with children and actually modeling good behavior while being on medication to reduce potential dependence on medication in the future. But, so I ended up finally getting formally diagnosed, I believe, around 16. And actually starting medication in high school to help with the problems and struggle I was having with doing my schoolwork. So I've known about this for a long time. But the more research I kind of do around ADHD, the more information I gathered, spectrum disorders, the common overlap with things. A friend of mine got diagnosed with ADHD after watching my ADHD videos and looking into it, and then also got comorbid diagnoses for like OCD and autism all at once. And I'm like, whoa. Then I started looking into things about the statistical likelihood of comorbidity of autism with ADHD, especially because we all know how strong the TikTok algorithm is. I was already on ADHD TikTok. And then it started bleeding into autism TikTok, which the more I started identifying more with what people with autism were saying versus ADHD people were saying, I'm like, oh, okay. Because remember, there's a big overlap. It's like a giant Venn diagram. There is a lot of overlap. And actually, I should share my script thing because, one, keep you entertained so you're not just looking at my face. And two, it actually helps me keep on track. So this is what I actually refer to when we make videos, because brain. So TikTok, the algorithm just kind of threw a lot of content in my face, and I started thinking seriously about it. Like, okay, I really identify with this in way too many ways to it just be a coincidence. And the severity, not the intensity of which I really identified with the anecdotal stories of what people are experiencing compared to my experience, I related to that far more than just plain old ADHD. Oh, I don't know where I placed my keys. I forgot stuff, or like the typical tropes. So then I started going and actually looking for informal, just self-driven assessing. Like, hey, maybe there is something more to this, maybe? So I took the tests on embraceautism.org, which, don't take that as like a formal answer, but like informing that there might be something more to look into. Great start. I took the RADS-R test, and I believe it's like, what is it? I think it's RADS-R is like a score of like 54 or 64 or something is like the basis for neurotypicality, like under that or something. Threshold, yeah. So like the threshold is like 65. So if you score less than 65 or something, or around that, yeah, I forget the exact specifics, but basically I was on the extreme high end for the RADS-R test. I scored like 175 or something like that. So I'm like, took all the other tests. Really strong indicators. So I'm like, okay, let's look at the DSM-5. And side note, if you're doing already this much extraness about a possibility of something, and you just kind of haven't been looked at or noticed about this by the medical profession, maybe a strong indicator. Like, why would you care so much about figuring out this answer and then doing all the all the stuff that I did for all of this? Like, maybe that's a very also strong indicator. But I did a review of the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistics Manual. It's like the Bible for psychiatry and psychology or something like that. And so the result of that was I went through and did like a 3-point laggard scale of severity of how I identify with those symptoms. So like obviously the intensity for most intense is red. And I went through all the different bullet points, highlighting like the things that I identify with most as like severe symptoms that I deal with on a daily basis. Sea of red. So looking at that, I'm like, okay, now I should look into this. So in preparation, because I've already seen and heard all kinds of drama online, especially from other people on TikTok with autism, and the actual assessment process, especially in the US healthcare system, especially because of all the stuff like the bias and the horrible sampling for the basis of the diagnostic criteria being, young white boys, and the legacy of Hans Asperger, and basically let's only keep the useful autistics. And female? Nah. There's so much baggage and issues that are still being dealt with around this whole sphere of adult autism, which is another explanatory factor, potentially, for the increasing rate of diagnosis. Everyone likes to say, oh, everyone's autistic these days. Everyone's getting diagnosed. Well, that's not because they're just handing it out like candy. Everyone's getting diagnosed because people are finally being taken seriously. They're actually performing assessments, and they're not just, they still are in heavy amounts, but people are being gaslit far less, and they're actually getting put through assessments, which end up yielding results. It's not just that they're just handing it out, because no. No. So I did my comprehensive review of the DSM-5, and then I went through every bullet point that I identified with, and I wrote anecdotal stories about what I've experienced on that particular bullet point. Then I had my entire family, my immediate family, mom, sister, grandma, primary caregivers, people who've been the closest with me, around me the longest and the most. I had my fiance do it, and I have dozens of pages of just stories and background and information about what I am like to be around from external perspectives relating to the diagnostic criteria. And I compiled all of this stuff into this freakishly large, color-coordinated, and organized binder of, I wonder if I have autism. I wonder. So, I took that, and I decided to finally, at that point, begin the process of contacting medical professionals to formally get assessed. And then hilarity, and by hilarity, I mean drama, ensues. What drama could you possibly encounter in the healthcare system of the American United States, you might ask? Well, let me regale you with this load of BS. So, first thing I did is I requested a referral from my GP doctor, my doctor I've been seeing since I was a kid. Hey, can I get referred to behavioral health for an autism assessment? You know, being a GP, he don't give a shit. So he's just like, referral. They get my referral, and they're like, no. Denied. It is not medically indicated at this time. What does that even mean? I work for the state government. I have government health insurance. It's one of the reasons why people go and work for the state government, is you get health insurance and a pension. I have health insurance. I have insurance. I want this service. Why the heck? So I contact friends, people that help me and give me information, and I figure out, oh, okay, there's an oversight agency here in California. Ironically, I work with them a little bit at work. And so I'm just going straight to the source, and I call these people. I'm like, hey, health plan here does not want to give me the services that I'm requesting. And they won't put it in my chart that they're denying me. Basically, I got told, you're appealing a little too high, a little too fast. Start lower. So, okay, I appeal the decision with that health plan. I get denied on my appeal. I file a grievance on the clinician who would not give me the assessment because that grievance gets denied. So then after all that dust settling, and I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what do I do next? I mean, you could pay for it out of pocket. There's, I think, embraceautism.org offers an option for testing out of pocket, but it's pricey. And why should I have to pay a pricey thing when I have health insurance? So I'm getting my ADHD medication renewed. Weirdly enough, the clinician I filed a grievance against is the one who's handling my renewal for that time. This is very weird. So then, after renewing my medication, we end up chatting informally about what happened. I filed a grievance against you. And then I'm basically told, you need to be actively in treatment to get a referral to testing. I'm like, so all I have to do is just be in therapy in this health plan to have a chance of getting a referral. Sign me up! Jeez, why was that so hard? So I start going to therapy, and my first appointment, I walk my little happy butt in there, and I'm like, hi, I have this! Let's have our first session. Halfway through the session, I get my referral for my autism assessment. 30 minutes in. Binder. Why couldn't we have just shortcutted the months of BS and runaround I had to go with the... Anyways. Then, as I'm waiting the projected 6 months, I was told ahead of time, you can either go to the state agency route for disability if you're trying to go out on disability, but that will take years to finish panning out because hashtag state government. Or what sounds more likely what you're trying to go for is just informational, like you want to know and it will inform your care, and they didn't think it would inform my care, which literally it affects all kinds of things, not just in your head. It affects everything about your body, your physiology, everything. But moving on. So I'm like, yes, I just want to know. I have a job, I've held a job, I love my job, and my job pays well. I'm good. I'm not trying to go out on disability, because apparently they really hate that. How interesting that they hate anybody potentially being disabled enough that they just don't want to, because disability in America sucks too. I don't even get started on any of these tangents. So, no, I'm not trying to go out on disability. That makes them happy. So I get my referral for an in-house testing. I have to wait about 6 months because, you know, it's the height of COVID and the staffing is impacted and it's a lot of effort and cost, which was things that were explained to me. And I'm just like, I don't care. It's a service I'm requesting as an insured plan member. Give me this freaking assessment. So I wait 6 months. During this 6 months, there is a strike. Now, being a unioned employee in the state government, I'm not going to say anything against a strike. Go fighting, go, yes. Especially because the strikers were the clinicians that I was seeing for therapy because they are, this is just what I was told, that they were upset with the balance of patients on their panels. So like if I can only see a patient once every 6 weeks, that's not great for continuity of care. And no, it's not. So they were upset about a great thing and fighting about that. So props. Now, as far as that went in affecting me, it did affect me slightly negatively because I kept getting bounced around between people because I got referred to specifically an ADHD specialist clinician, and I wanted to only talk to and work with him for the duration of this assessment process, which was the advice given by the person I filed a grievance on originally and started therapy with. And I just kept getting bounced around between people who just... nobody knew what was going on. So finally, strike is over. The dude is free. I got an appointment. I meet with him. And then weirdness occurs in the chart because of some of the people I met with beforehand. And my assessment got... I had to redo No, I threw a big fit. And thankfully he bared with that and figured it out. And okay, no, we're all good. Everything is on track. Everything's fine. You still have to wait a little bit longer, but then the assessment ended up starting very shortly after I meet this guy for the first time. And then I start with the actual assessment. That person, the assessor, super awesome. Lovely experience, very friendly. I downright enjoyed the experience. It was not bad. Everything else up to that point was horrible. But the assessor and the way the whole thing worked, the way it was explained, the time spent, everything, lovely. No complaints about that. So, I was given like several handouts. Actually, the whole process took several days, spread across a couple weeks. So you do a day of testing, not a whole day, but like a bunch of testing, and then the assessor gets time to review that stuff, and then you come back in for another session. Sometimes they can change based on how much they want. So it was a little all over the place, but I'll now detail a little bit more about what the process entails. So before we started the assessing, I stopped by the office that I would be going to for it, picked up a bunch of packets, and basically my mom, my partner, my fiance, and we just all had to fill out like hundreds, and I think I had to fill out probably well over 1,000 multiple choice questions on all of these packets. Then I had to do several rounds of interviews of just me, but then it was also requested, and I brought my mom in for an interview with the assessor, just the two of them, about, me as a child. And based on my mom's answers, it's just like, you're undiagnosed as well, right? Which is very apparent. And I could see like the facial expressions on the assessor. She's just like, interesting answer. Oh. So there were like various exercises, little games, things to test various aspects of whatever the lady was looking for. Super nice and professional. She did take this gigantic binder and used it more as like referential because, she wasn't going to read all of this, and I had no expectation of that either. Like, I got all of the Embraced Autism assessments. I have all of my school-age documents from elementary, middle, high school, IQ tests, accelerated, or the GATE program, all of the DSM-5 reviews. Like, this is a bunch of stuff. So she took it for, like, reference, and reviewing that in addition to all of the interviews and information collected. And basically just used it to reaffirm her already burgeoning suspicions, as she said. So she already had a really good idea that's likely, but then she took the binder also to just also inform her opinions. So make a binder. So after several weeks of this testing and meeting her a couple times for the assessments, I eventually went by, picked up my binder, got my results, and so I'll go over the results in a bit. So I mentioned this earlier, but there is an article here too. I'll probably just link, but There is extreme bias in testing, and I haven't done enough research on this to say this with absolute certainty, so grain of salt. I will be making more content about it in the future, and I have a lot of research to do. But the diagnostic criteria is heavily biased towards young white boys, because that is who informed the diagnostic process when the criteria was being established. Now, it may have been revised. I think there's a new version of the DSM. I don't know enough about what's going on in the field of psychology and psychiatry to say definitively, but this has been a historic thing at least. So given that criteria is based for a certain demographic, that means women or, AFAB people and minorities have an incredibly difficult time in general, but in addition, have an incredibly difficult time dealing with this whole assessment process. Not to mention just the barriers, the systemic barriers of, healthcare. Can you even afford healthcare? And is it even coverage? Not to mention, to even get this far as a neurodivergent person is an effort, a monumental effort. Because imagine you're dealing with impairment with executive function and prioritization and focus issues, and having to deal with this giant issue of the steamroller healthcare system trying not to give you the services that you are entitled to. So confronting all of this is a little bit insane. So there's a lot to overcome. Not to mention, like, being AFAB in a medical office, like, how often are you just going to be gaslit? Which, I mean, I'm helping several people I went to high school with deal with approaching the assessment process for themselves, because they're just constantly gaslit by doctors who don't want to give them any treatment or service at all. So it's incredibly biased. So don't walk in ignorant of that. Make sure they document things in your chart. Oh, you're refusing me care? I want it documented in my chart why you are refusing me this care. Hopefully, if it's a decent enough place, they won't have to get to that point. Or if they do, it's documented, it's in writing, and you can go crazy on the fact that you have documentation about them refusing you care. So, yeah. Okay. Why did I want this? This is a whole insane story. Why do this then? Why do you want this? So, there is several reasons of why I wanted this. One, I have the means to pursue it. I mean, I have health insurance. I have, enough income. Like, I could afford and I could manage to accomplish this. It is not an undue financial burden to me. So I have the means, but why? Personally, given the aforementioned statements about the difficulty in actually getting the assessment and diagnosis, being AFAB or AFAB, I should probably define acronyms, assigned female at birth, or being a minority, given the difficulties with that, self-diagnosis is highly valid, and a lot of autistics do feel that self-diagnosis is heavily valid, because there are all of these barriers, and even very good reasons to not get formally diagnosed, that if you identify strongly enough with the diagnosis, and you don't want to have it formally attached to you, go nuts. It's all you. It doesn't matter. And I don't hold that any less. I'm not going to discount anybody because they're self-diagnosed at all. I'm just going to say, oh, sweet, nice. How about these lights? Pretty loud, huh? So I don't hold that against people. Now, me personally, what I felt is that if I'm going to talk about this on the internet, which I did want to, I personally felt strongly that I want to be talking from a place of being formally diagnosed. One, just for credibility. Two, just for the confidence in, like, other people external to myself with medical expertise have officially said, yeah, you got the tism. So I wanted that for me and for my own reasons. Now, do I think that everyone needs to do that to be acknowledged? No, absolutely the frick not. So that's just what I wanted it for. That, and also the validity. Like, I can actually say definitively, no, I'm autistic. It still feels weird to say because it's so, like, adjusting my identity to this new reality. But I wanted to be able to say those things and know this with confidence. I pursued it for reasons that I held and that were important to me, and that's why I pursued it. Plus, in a formal work environment, which I work in government, a formal diagnosis does mean that it would be more feasible for me to actually get accommodations and have more workplace protections if I ever got to that point, which thankfully in my new jobs that have not been heavily toxic, I haven't needed to resort to that. Some prior jobs, maybe, could have helped a lot. But, it can help. But it also can hurt. Why would you not want a formal diagnosis? There's a couple reasons why you might not want it. Having an autism diagnosis can actually affect your ability to get visas for several different countries. Off the top of my head, I do believe Canada and New Zealand might be some of them, but I'm not sure. Like, if you have a formal diagnosis of autism, they might not want you to move into that country. I mean, I think their perspective is we don't want a heavy support needs individual that is going to drain the local system because we have good care and therefore everyone's going to come here. And I don't know if that's their stance or what. I think it's absolute BS. But yeah, it can affect your ability to get visas. It can affect your outcomes in court. Are you fit to be a parent and have custody? No, you're autistic. So we're going to give custody to the other parent. You cannot care for this child. When maybe you can. So it can affect that. There's just, ableism in everyday life. People who just, oh, you're autistic? Well, let me infantilize you. Or just completely discount your entire ableism. And then some people, and it's potentially a very valid concern, which is really frightening, is that now you are on a list. Like, you are on a potentially a registry of people who have autism within a given health plan, which means, let's just say we have a reenactment of World War II and they round up everybody who's disabled and they send them all to a camp, which happened. Very real possibility. I mean, I'm already on a list because I was ADHD to begin with, and I work for the government. They know everything about me anyway, so yay, America. So yeah, you might want it, you might not want it. Your decision is perfectly valid either way. And if you still self-diagnose and you claim you are autistic and you don't have a formal diagnosis, power to you. I'm not going to say anything against it. Go nuts. So now that I have my autism diagnosis, now what? So as soon as I got the news from the clinician, she asked me, how do you feel? And I told her, and I told everybody, initially I'm just blank. Like, well, there's that. Okay. I just didn't feel anything. I mean, partly this was like acknowledging suspicions I already had. This was validation. So it wasn't like a shock. I just kind of felt blank. I mean, a year of effort finally panned out and I finally got what I was pursuing. I got what I pursued. But I mean, it is validation, and so it's not any less of a win that it's just acknowledgement of what I already thought. But I mean, there is a sense of peace in it. I am autistic. So, woohoo! It does confirm a lot of things that I have struggled with in my life that are not just related to ADHD. And in hearing more about the experiences of other autistic adults, TikTok, namely, I identify more with autism than I do with ADHD. I mean, I definitely do still have both. It was reconfirmed in this assessment. In fact, I got a whole party bag of new diagnoses. I got unspecified ADHD, so they don't know which type, inattentive, hyperactive, or combination. They don't know. And I could find out, but honestly, I don't really care too much about that. ADHD unspecified, autism level 1, unspecified eating disorder, unspecified anxiety disorder, because of my weird proclivities with food and my chronic anxiety, apparently, about existence. So I left with a whole party bag of diagnoses. Lovely. But I identify more with the autistic experience than the ADHD experience in isolation. But given this is a paper I found, I need to dig it up again, you're statistically more likely to have both autism and ADHD in conjunction than you are to have one of them in isolation. So you are more likely to have both autism and ADHD than to have just autism or just ADHD alone. And it's interesting because when I talk about my ADHD stuff in my older videos that people apparently really relate to a lot, constantly still getting comments all the time about how much people relate to that, I was describing an ADHD experience, autism and ADHD together. So if you resonate with that so strongly, maybe you have both, because it's statistically more likely that you have both. Because I've met with people, I've seen people, and I've interacted with people who have just ADHD, and it is very much the stereotype of ADHD. And I interact with these people, and I'm like, I don't really relate to this experience as much. So it's been a little bit more of an illumination on my lived experience. And so I may be hyperactive mentally with ADHD, like my mind is constantly moving, racing thoughts sometimes. I do struggle still with nonverbal working memory, out of sight, out of mind, but everything about autism really describes my lived experience. Like there's very few, if any, of the symptoms that has not directly applied to me that I don't fit. So now it's just like I get to move forward with this new self-understanding. And guess what, folks? We got a new hyperfixation. I'm reading everything about autism. Because I have all the time in the world for my hyperfixations. Okay, so now that we know things, what is autism? So I'm just going to read more of these things verbatim. It's very hard to answer what is autism because everyone will tell you something different, and there are strict definitions in clinical sources. But if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. These are spectrum disorders. So when people say autism spectrum disorder, ASD, it is a spectrum. And what most people think of when they hear spectrum is they really think of gradient. High functioning, low functioning, severely autistic, kind of autistic. These are inaccurate. And many people will also tell you that autism is not high functioning, low functioning, because that's really ableist in perspective to say, like, what is high and low functioning? Basically, how well you adjust and fit into a society that is literally not designed or accommodating to you in any capacity. So really, it's how neurotypical passing are you? How little are you affected by the world that is not accommodating to you? So high and low functioning, bad. High and low support needs, more accurate statement. How much support do you need in life? You could still struggle just as much with all the things, but do you need a lot of support, or do you still only need a little bit of support because you don't need that much? It's more accurate of what your experience actually is. Do you need a lot of support or no? But this is one of my favorite graphics right here. It is a spectrum. It is not like this. Very autistic, a little bit autistic. No. It's like this. High social skills, low interests, other sensitivities, perception. There's a whole bunch of things that you could have more severity or less severity in. You could have a lot of problems with executive dysfunction, but have great social skills. Like, it's a spectrum. There are various skills. It's kind of like a D&D character. Like, you could have high charisma but low wisdom, or like all of these things make up the spectrum of a person. So if you've met one person, you've met one person, because all of our character sheets are different. Everyone has different attributes to different levels and degrees. So high and low functioning, don't use that. So the CDC defines autism as a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. Some people with ADHD have a known difference, such as a genetic condition. Other causes are not yet known. Scientists believe there are multiple causes of ASD that act together to change the most common ways people developed. We still have a lot to learn about it. We don't know that much about what causes it, but they have beliefs that it's environmental factors, genetic factors, all kinds of different factors that interplay. I've even seen other papers talking about how it could just be a growth condition related to, ages of 1 to 5. You have a abnormal amount of growth in the density and connections of the neurons in your brain, like upwards of like 64% or something like that of abnormally high growth. And then with synaptic pruning to trim that down like a neurotypical person to the most useful and commonly used pathways, autistic people don't have synaptic pruning anywhere near to the degree of a neurotypical person. So everything in our head is denser and more highly interconnected, and that causes a whole slew of benefits and or problems, depending on how you feel about it and interact with it. People with autism may behave, communicate, interact with, and learn in ways that are different from most people. Confirmed. There is often nothing about how they look that sets them apart from other people. Once again, for the people in the back, there is often nothing about how they look that sets them apart from other people. You don't look autistic. No. What does it look like? So usually when people say that, they mean you don't look like that young autistic boy who doesn't speak, doesn't make eye contact, has to wear headphones all the time outside, cannot hold a conversation because he can't talk, and just flaps his arms because he's stimming in public. Oh, because I don't look like that, I can't be? Don't do that. Please don't do that. It just vastly highlights your ignorance through a megaphone. Please don't do that. The abilities with people with ASD can vary significantly. For example, some people with ASD may have advanced conversation skills, whereas other people may be nonverbal. People have literally told me in comments on my videos, there's no way you have anything wrong with you. You speak so eloquently. Yeah. Doesn't mean I don't have anything. Like, if I'm passionate about a topic or a subject, like if you've noticed in this video alone, because, I'm cognitively aware of myself from the third person, #metacognition. In the beginning of the video, as I'm starting to ramp up how invested I am in the content that I'm speaking about right now, you can hear I do more, pausing phrases, which usually when people do that in the things I'm listening to, it bothers the hell out of me. But when I do it, I know I'm doing it. I'm just like, ugh, I did it again. But as you can tell now, I'm speaking more eloquently. I'm not having to take those pauses to think. I'm talking literally off the cuff. Like, I'm not reading from a script right now. This is me. And I can do that eloquently because it's a topic I am passionate about and I know a lot about. And when you have those things in combination, there you go. Eloquent speaking, conversational skills. Bam. Now, conversation, if that requires back and forth, social skills kind of drop off there for me. But if it comes to just talking and even presenting information in ways, that's probably why a lot of people really like the way that I present information in my tutorials and informational videos, is because I break it down in a way, and I think about ways to break it down for people who don't have familiarity with the expertise in the subject matter. So, some people with ASD need a lot of help in their daily lives. Others can work and live with little to no support. High and low support needs. Straight from the CDC. Not Bryan, CDC. And then, from the American Psychiatric Association, ASD is a complex developmental condition involving persistent challenges with social communication, restricted interests, and repetitive behavior. While autism is considered a lifelong disorder, the degree of impairment in functioning because of these challenges varies between individuals with autism. Kind of just reaffirming things, but I really don't like the way they put it. But whatever. So, some other bullet points of my own. Like many neurodivergent conditions, if you've met one of us, you've met one of us. And there are many of us. And this is recently, there is 1 in 44 prevalence of people with ASD. This has already just been updated again to 1 in 36. And this is going to blow your mind. Psychiatry.org, CDC. I'm sorry, not psychiatry.org, CDC. Straight from the CDC. The diagnosis rate of autism has been increasing almost every year. Every time they do these samplings. Just in the year 2000, it was 1 in 150. It's now 1 in 36. It's not that everyone's autistic. It's that they're actually diagnosing the people with autism. And it's likely even more than this because of the marginalized groups. AFAB, minorities, genderqueer and trans people, there's a lot of comorbidity with that as well. So there's likely still even more that is not being captured by this sampling. So it's not that everyone is, it's just a lot of people are, and they're finally getting that acknowledgement. So celebrate the fact that people are actually learning about themselves. What the evaluator in my assessment told me in simple terms was that an individual's social communication skills need to be significantly lower than their overall intellectual abilities to really qualify for autism. That was kind of new to me. Interesting things to look into. This is kind of more of a note for myself of on the point of communication skills, the double empathy problem. And according to the CDC, autism begins before the age of 3, and there is no single cause or source. You do not acquire it, except potentially through heredity, i.e. mommy and daddy. There is, it's not infectious. You cannot catch it. You will not acquire it unless you were born with it through a variety of factors. See all the things I've said above, environmental, heredity, whatever. You cannot get it from vaccines. Cannot. Sources, receipts. You cannot get autism from vaccinations. It is a controversy and a myth. Does not happen. No. Zero. And on the whole vaccine thing, this is what my opinion, the first time I heard about this was already my opinion. How horrible is it to say that you're going to forego getting yourself, your children, vaccinated from potentially life-threatening diseases that have been pandemics in the past that have killed hundreds, thousands, millions of people because of the slight risk in your mind that has been disproven, but hey, cognitive dissonance, you're not going to believe that fake news. But in your mind, for the slight chance that your child might be autistic. And in autism, being a spectrum doesn't mean that they might be low support needs, but for the slight chance that your child might be autistic, you're not willing to take the risk of getting them vaccinated. Not to mention that vaccination, they have to be alive outside of you for that, which means, before the age of 3, or you're born with... Cognitive dissonance is real, and I really just don't understand, people. But how crappy of you to say that just because you have a chance of having an autistic child, you're going to potentially risk your child's actual life with diseases that are completely preventable, and in fact cause a reemergence of these diseases with mutated strains because they're allowed to thrive again because you have not engaged in herd immunity for the immunocompromised individuals. So you're literally threatening other people's lives through your own ignorance and cognitive dissonance. Do not be these people, please. And also, identity first language. What is it? Why does it matter? Saying, for instance, I don't have autism. I am autistic. He is autistic. He does not have autism. Why is this important? Because there are a lot of groups that treat autism as something to be cured, as something to be dealt with. There's not a cure. It's not a cold. It's not a virus. It is a fundamental difference in the structures, the coordination of your brain and your body, and there is so much going on with what autism affects. Like, literally, it's insane. It's more than I ever even thought, and I have piles of research to do. Your connective tissue, your bowels, your coordination, your everything about your brain, like, crazy. Absolutely crazy how much this affects. There's not a cure. You're not going to cure this. And often, and even, especially for me, my own personal opinion about it, I wouldn't want to be cured. If there was a magical no more autism cure pill that I could take and cure, no, I wouldn't. Do I struggle with a lot of things? Yes. Does it cause me a lot of pain? Do I have a lot of social issues and isolation and difficulty? And are a lot of things a heavy struggle for me in daily life? Yes. But is my unique autistic experience valuable enough to me that I would still take everything about what I am and keep it, the good and the bad? Yes. Yes, I would. Do I think it's bad if people make that decision for themselves and say, no, I'd take the pill? Absolutely not. You're entitled to your own opinion about your own experience. That's your decision to make. I don't have opinion about it either way. You do you. That's your informed decision to make. But for me, I wouldn't do it. But to assume that people want and need to be cured, bad view. You're not going to cure it. So organizations like Autism Speaks, and usually most any autism organization with a puzzle piece in the imagery, and organizations that are not led or speak from or listen to autistic voices, red flag, big red flag. And Autism Speaks and anybody associated with them, toxic red flag. Avoid them like the plague. There are plenty of videos on YouTube and other creators that have talked plenty about Autism Speaks, but heck no. Heck no to those people. Don't support them, please. Yeah, so you're not going to cure this. You are autistic. You do not have autism. And the distinction is important for identity-first language. It's not something to cure. It is fundamentally who you are, and it shapes everything about you as a person. And it's not to say, like, everything is getting blamed on the autism. You have no accountability. No, there are explanations and not excuses. Just because I'm autistic and struggle with social interaction doesn't mean I can just go invade people's personal spaces and, like, you know, touch them or whatever. Like, no, like, I'm an adult. I can understand things. I can understand that you don't just go over and touch people. Like, no. So if I accidentally do something, or if I do something that is, you know, not okay, the explanation is I have autism. Maybe that changed, like, how I perceived a particular situation and I acted incorrectly. I'm now separate from that touching example because that's a little too obvious and that's not a good explanation example for this. And so I have the explanation of autism, but it's not the excuse that discounts my behavior. I still then have the obligation to engage in personal growth, in learning from that experience and understanding, okay, because of my autism, because of being autistic, I have made this mistake. You have told me about the mistake and the correct courses of action or things I should have done. And now I'm going to work on that. I'm not just going to be like, I have autism. I'm autistic. I can't do that now. No accountability. No, that's not how it works. So I tell my fiance all the time, like, this is the explanation. This is why we got here. This is why this has occurred. That is why. So now that I know that that is incorrect and there are better ways to do this and this is how I should do it, I am going to work on that and try and do things that way. Growing pains, granted, might still happen again, but I'm working on it. That's one, that's just healthy relationships. But two, accountability and explanation, not excuse, is personally how I approach it. Some things you're just not going to change. Like, some things you're just not going to change. I'm not going to change the fact that I don't like lots of auditory stimuli. I don't like parties. I don't like crowds. I'm never going to like that. So it's not something that I have to learn to be a pleasant party person. Like, I'm not going to learn that. I can try and bear with it. I can try and prepare for it and, you know, beef up the sensory armor and have a calm, quiet day and then spend my mental coins on that experience to be with my partner at a place doing a whatever. Some things you're going to learn, some things you're going to change, some things you can change, some things you can't change. Knowing the difference is going to help you a lot. Now, finally, there are treatment options for autism. Now, being diagnosed as an adult, which is already a trial, I didn't get any treatment for anything, like anything remotely related to this. So I can't really, speak from experience on any of these treatments, other than I've heard that ABA is absolutely horrible for autistic children. Yeah, I mean, I've heard plenty that this is horrible, but do your own research. I have not experienced this. Yeah, but there's apparently other things that you can do. Medication for comorbid depression, anxiety, and impulsivity. Autism-related irritability can be reduced by medication such as blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, and then comorbid ADHD, I take ADHD medication. Yeah, it helps. So I mean, I've already talked about that in a video on my channel, but there are some things that you can do, apparently, but your mileage may vary. I don't have any experience with this, so I can't talk about it from a place of experience. So that's what autism is. What is it like being autistic? What is my lived experience? So I've talked about a lot of it in my other videos. I now have a new lens of understanding about autism because of my diagnosis. I now know that I have it. So seeing all of my prior content and my life experience, my life flashed before my eyes, my experience is now well informed and everything changed. So now it's like so much more makes sense. So let me just show you this. This is part of the binder packet I made for my assessment. So these are just like experiences that I deal with in daily life in like categories. So like in physical things, lack of stimulation. So if I'm not, being stimulated, or if there's nothing going on, it's just like road hypnosis or long stretches of highway, I get drowsy when I'm driving. The lack of stimulation literally puts me to sleep. I've almost died driving because of this. Fidgeting. I got fidget toys up the yin yang. I got this new one actually called Specs. That's like a bunch of little magnetic rocks that I think is the freaking coolest thing ever. It's like clean putty, but with magnetic rocks. Love it. Always fidgeting. Always have a fidget toy. Bouncing my leg. Delayed sleep phase syndrome. I like to get up later in the morning, and I like to stay up often. I mean, if I am back to my really bad habits, I usually would stay up till like 3 in the morning. And that's when I like to finally go to bed. But it's not working with daily life, so can't do that. Sensory issues. Overstimulation. Well, let's just say that I'm working on a problem at work. I'm coding something out. There's a side conversation going on over there. Maybe my fiance's in a meeting. A loud noise happens. The cats knock something over in the background. Suddenly, just like all of that makes... Now this light is too bright. The light in the window is too bright. I go to look at what the cat's doing. I bump into something. Meltdown. At that point, too much happened too quickly in too condensed of a time period. Too much happened, and now I'm just... all the time. That kind of stuff happens all the time. It doesn't even need to be big things. It's just all kinds of stuff, all too much, all too once. Just, overstimulation. Light, eye contact, too much stimulation via sight. Sound, I am hypersensitive to loud noises or just too much noise or too little noise. So like I have noise canceling headphones. I use them all the time, especially if I'm not at home in my in my comfy environment. Like this is my cave office. Like this is my space. So this is where I can unmask more and just be not overstimulated a lot. Still, it happens though, plenty here. Sensitive to very bad smells. I can't stand the smell of my cat's food, or just like food in containers that's gone bad and sat too long, and I hate touching that. The feeling of my hands being dirty, wet, slimy, sticky, anything. Unplanned moisture or stickiness on my hands. Ugh, hate it. Lord, when I touch tree sap, gah, hate. I grew up with, very picky tastes, safe foods. I would have like macaroni and cheese and crackers like every day for lunch for a month. And still, I enjoy these things. Very, very picky. Interoception, I often tend to just hold my bladder and rush to the bathroom because I'm not even paying attention. I'm so hyperfixated on something that I'm just like putting it off until I can't. And I have to rush to go to the bathroom. I just ignore my normal bodily impulses. Hunger, I don't even know I'm hungry most of the time. I usually only eat 1 meal a day, and that's dinner because I just don't feel hungry, or I just don't want to, and I just like drink some tea or something to make it go away. I don't even like food. Like I like eating, obviously. I like food, but like the concept of food, I hate food. I hate planning the grocery list, going to the grocery store, buying the groceries, loading the groceries up, taking the groceries home, unloading the groceries, putting the groceries away, pulling them out, prepping them, cooking them, cleaning up after it. I just want to eat and go back to what I was doing. I hate everything about food. except eating it. I hate it. I hate it. And pain. I have a very high pain tolerance. My grandparents have told me, like, one time I'm running around their property and I trip and fall face first into gravel. I don't even cry. I just get up, brush myself off, and keep going about what I'm doing, but with just, like, less intensity because, just face planted. I bump into stuff all the time. I find bruises. Wow, how did that get there? When I get tattoos, oftentimes I get 4 or 5 of them in a single session. Like, this shoulder, this whole round one, this shoulder, this whole round one, this one on my forearm right here, and this one on my wrist right here. All of that was in one sitting. One. Apparently that made my the psychologist balk when I told her that. She's like, whoa. So high pain tolerance, motor control issues. I'm constantly running into stuff, but this is basically just, you know, postural sway. I can be standing perfectly balanced, you know, legs split, shoulder width apart, stable. And I will literally just keel over suddenly and I have to move my foot and catch myself. Like, it happens all the time. I literally just start falling over. Postural sway, that's an interesting one I have to look into more, but it's just crazy. Like, I just fall over. Voice differences, speaking monotone, or like a child, or in silly voices. Or I just get, like, really excitable and loud, like you've probably noticed in the video. Watch the beginning of this video, and then, like, now, like, I went from slightly monotone getting into this, and now that I'm like invested into it, I'm like, very exuberant. Volume changes, that. Or nonverbal. Sometimes I don't feel, like, especially when I'm having a meltdown and just overwhelmed, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk it out. I don't even want to, I just want to sit there in silence, saying nothing, doing nothing, just let me come back to Earth. I don't want to talk. Because if I have to talk, then I'm yelling at you from space, trying to make sure that you're hearing me, and that all that effort is adding on to the pile of bad at the moment. Let me come back down to Earth and talk to you in a normal tone of voice later. But sometimes I just don't want to talk. I can't talk. I don't. No. So mentally, the impulsivity, I literally spent thousands of dollars on this server stuff. I mean, granted, I am not, like, in debt. It's not like I'm making bad decisions, but, like, impulsively, my impulsive spending is bad. My neighbors joke that I literally always have a delivery truck here. Every day, somebody's dropping off something. It's not me, it's my fiance, but way too much impulsive spending, but impulsive food control, portion control, moderation is bad. I'll eat a whole bag of something, a whole tub of something. Just sit down, eat it all, one sitting. Bad portions, and I don't know when I'm full until I'm literally stuffed, and it's why, like, I put on and I lose weight so quickly. It's bad. Executive dysfunction, I've talked a lot about this before, like the inability to start projects due to perceived difficulty or the volume of steps and tasks, unable to complete necessary tasks in life like cooking, cleaning, or like personal hygiene, like showering. Like, if I'm gonna leave the house and be around people, I'm gonna make a point to do it. But, like, I'm just be like, I don't want to transition into the state of being wet. And then after that, state changes, that's a big one. It's hard. And even difficult to bring myself to do enjoyable tasks. Things I want to do, sometimes I can't even bring myself to do that just because of effort. Like, the mental coins. I don't use the spoons thing. I like actually saying coins. I have coins to spend on something. And sometimes I just have no coins. I've spent it all. I have negative coins. I can't do it. Even if it would enjoy it. Even if it would give me coins, I can't do it. I just can't. Hyperfixation. I've beaten the dead horse about that one. Makes me really good at my job as long as the thing I'm fixated on is exactly what I'm supposed to be focused on at my job. So, double-edged sword, but hey, I got a sword! Mental processing. Everything in the world is too slow for me. Like, my mental processing speed is fast. And, like, my assessment kind of highlighted that. But like, I'm predicting conversations and stories before people even finish telling to me. I can see where something is going 3 steps ahead. I'm already bored because I know the story. I know where it ends. I know why we're talking about this. I know the tropes and the things in movies and media and storytelling. If it's the same thing over and over again, it's boring. Which is why when you surprise me and it's abrupt and it's unexpected, that's when it's pure joy. Which is why I found out, like, neurodivergent and autistic humor is just sheer random chaos because you can't predict it. It's just sudden and chaotic and hilarious. And you don't see it coming. I learn and absorb information at a rapid pace. Like, the rate at which I can fixate on something and learn it is insane. Again, it makes me really good at my job and just at picking up things in life. I can, as long as I'm interested in it. When people are trying to tell me something at work, I often need them to rephrase it in different ways just to help me process it and to understand. But as soon as I get over that little hump of misunderstanding and I get it, then it's like, bam, lightning. I'm way ahead again. I get this little speed bumps, but then shooting forward. It's like a Ferrari with no brakes. I've talked about Ferrari brain before. It's like having a Ferrari for a brain with no brakes. I am going. I can't slow down to keep pace with you. I am going. But if there's a misunderstanding and I need to actually turn left there, I'm still going. But then I need to go back, slow down, turn, going again. So, Ferrari brain. Sometimes everything is too fast and I get overwhelmed that I am not keeping up, or it's just too much sensory. This is more of just like sensory overload. Like I had a meltdown in Costco once because just too many people. Cart. I don't want to hit people with the cart. Move the cart over here. People. Noise. Fiance asking me a question. Grocery list. Food. Yeah. So too much, too fast. Or just, getting stuck on a particular point in a work meeting and I need that answer before I can move on, but people need to move on and I just get overwhelmed trying to break into the conversations and return back to my original point. It's like, I need to just stop. Answer the question. Okay, good. Now continue. And my prior boss, oh my God, he was amazing at this. Absolutely worked with me the way that I needed to process information and be communicated with. It was a dream. Absolutely best working experience of my life. Emotional. I've talked about rejection sensitive dysphoria, which ADHD people also know this very well. Stress-induced mental shutdowns and meltdowns, just because you even perceive that somebody is, upset with you, angry at you, doesn't like you, or just it's just a whole mess. Emotional dysregulation, irrational anger and frustration at inanimate objects. Like, let's just say you're trying to build a piece of IKEA furniture and something is not working. It's just not going in all the way and you just get so irrationally frustrated with it. Or like the example I can actually pull from childhood, playing a video game and you just can't get past a particular area and you do it over and over and over again and you get so fixated on it and you can't do it and you get frustrated. And I've literally thrown controllers across rooms. And like, you might think, oh, gamers do that all the time. Maybe. But I'm autistic. So maybe it's not just bad behavior activity. Maybe it's I'm so emotionally dysregulated and upset at an irrational situation, an inanimate object, and I just chuck the thing. I've done it way too much. Just hitting things because I'm frustrated. Not people, but inanimate objects. Emotional dysregulation induced by overstimulation, leading to meltdowns. Like I'm overwhelmed, and then somebody asks me a question, and I respond with just anger, irritation, frustration, because I'm just so overwhelmed, I just can't stop. And they perceive that as anger when I'm literally just overwhelmed and melting down. It's not even about you. Don't get mad at me. I'm not mad at you. It's not about you. I am literally losing my shit here. And you're just asking a question, trying stop. Can you not see something is wrong over here? But being autistic has actually negatively impacted my relationships in my life heavily, because I did not know. This is why also getting diagnosed and knowing can be so important and validating. If I had known about this and about how I am the way that I am, I might have learned that the reason why I could never hold a relationship ever is that at the first sign of something truly negative going on, my RSD and dysregulation kicks up, and I end up breaking up with the person and leaving, fleeing the negative stimulation of an emotional confrontation that might be perfectly healthy in a relationship. Could I have been in a completely different pathway in life because I could have made a prior relationship work because I didn't, just go with my innate reaction of just run away from bad thing because of autism? Who knows? I mean, I'm happy where I'm at. Life has brought me to a great place and I'm happy being here. But the pain, not only my own, but the pain I've caused other people because of this lack of understanding. They may have just thought, yeah, I dated that asshole so many years ago. He was horrible. He just broke up with me. We were just having a calm argument. It was an argument, but and he just broke up with me. I was so messed up. I don't know. I try to stay friendly with people, but how much pain have I caused people because I didn't know that this was why I reacted that way, and that you don't react that way. Usually, you should sit down and work out your issues, and it's normal to have an argument and a fight in a relationship. Didn't know that. So that, and thankfully my fiance is the first person in my life who held on tight enough to keep me from running away, to actually calm me down enough to help me realize this whole thing before I ever got diagnosed, but to actually help me realize that. And then once I realized that, I stopped running away and I've actually worked on problems. And it's why I'm marrying this girl. So yeah, maybe a diagnosis would have helped. And then emotional dysregulation. Being autistic in a neurotypical world is freaking traumatizing as a baseline. But then, I grew up with a narcissistic family member who literally abused my sister and I. So, trauma! And then emotional communication issues. It's hard to verbalize my emotions. Oftentimes I don't even know what I'm feeling. And I still don't often. It's hard to even understand what I'm feeling. And a prior therapist told me once that one of my issues that I have is that I don't feel my emotions. I process them. I understand what I am feeling. And I might be I'm very angry about this. Or, I'm very angry about that. But I'm not feeling it. I'm not embodying the emotion. The emotion's not in my body. I'm just thinking about it. I'm processing it. I'm working through it, but I'm not feeling it. Which is why I barely ever cannot cry. It's not that I don't do that. I'm a man. No, that's toxic masculinity. But I have even tried to make myself cry because how crappy is it to have all of these issues, the emotional dysregulation, the sensory overload, the overwhelm, the meltdown, and to not even have the emotional release of just a good cry. I'm pissed about that. I don't even get to have the release of crying in a heavily emotional situation. Ever. I just can't. I want to, and I just can't. That sucks. So I can't even verbalize my emotions all the time because I don't even know if I'm feeling them. Nah. And empathy. I need to do more research on this, especially with the double empathy problem. But it's kind of, this is actually inaccurate what I've written. It's more of just instead of being emotional empathy where you feel what the other person is feeling, I can see that you're crying and upset, and then I feel that too. I feel sad and I feel crying and I feel upset. No, I don't feel that ever. I can look at somebody literally going through an emotional experience and I don't feel what you're feeling. I don't empathize with that emotion. I'm not feeling that emotion. And maybe that's tied to the emotion, the inability to understand the emotion. and to not feel it and to only process it mentally. Maybe that's why it's related. Maybe this is my unique experience. Who knows? But I don't feel the emotion that you're feeling. What I do have is cognitive empathy. And I just I just had a great video, and I'm taking notes on this too. But it's different. There is a difference. Cognitive empathy, and actually, empathy. There's this great TikTok explaining it. TikTok is great. Empathy is not about a reaction of emotion, it's about understanding emotion. So there's two types. Emotional, when you understand someone else's feeling because you feel that way. Like, I see you crying, I feel like crying. I see that you're sad, I feel sad because I'm witnessing this. Seeing a character in a movie experience sadness and grief over a death, and then feeling those emotions yourself, feeling sadness and grief over a death in the movie, that is emotional empathy. I personally don't feel like I have this at all. Because even when I fight with my fiance and we have a heavy emotional moment, I know that I don't feel the way that she feels. It just doesn't affect me that way. And so I take that understanding and I try to deal with the situation in a way that is palatable for both of us to resolve the conflict healthily. But like what I do feel like I have is cognitive empathy. When you fundamentally understand why a person is feeling the way they are. The why. I'm not feeling it, but I understand why you are feeling it that way. And this is based in logic. Not traditional logic that people are used to. This is talking about how people say, like, women are so emotional. They're not logical about their problems. This basically is a great explanation of this, of just, no, they don't want a solution to their problem. They want first to say, wow, that sucks. Yeah, it does. They want to feel heard, validated. I understand that you are feeling this. I understand why you're feeling this. You are not crazy. I understand why you are feeling that way. That's the first thing. And again, this is a generalization, so I'm not being prescriptive here. Then the next step is, you're not crazy for feeling that. I understand why you're feeling that way. Solution, what can we do about that? But cognitive empathy is understanding logically why somebody might feel a particular way. If you get slapped by somebody, your initial reaction is emotion. You get angry. I would see that, and I'm not going to feel angry, immediately, but I'm going to understand why you're angry. You just got slapped. Of course you're angry. So it's not based on traditional logic. It forces you to think logically about why somebody might not be thinking logically. You get slapped. What's your first reaction? Not to think logically. I have been slapped. Why have you done this? It is thinking, why are they not acting logically? Because he just got slapped. Cognitive empathy. So usually when people think about having empathy, they might be thinking about one or the other. So interesting things there. Social. Like my working memory, I forget about important tasks, things. I've talked a lot about this, about how I use software to cover this deficiency. It helps, but like working memory. I prefer to focus on details before the big picture. So like people say like I'm too in the weeds, detail oriented. Triggered. When I hear people say I'm detail oriented, and then I look at the thing and I notice all these details that they don't, I just think, but are you though? It's probably just autism, but I'm just like, when I say I'm detail-oriented, I'm detail-oriented. But the one thing I like to tell people about this is that it doesn't mean I just get lost in the weeds. I can see the big picture. My favorite quote about this is, I don't miss the forest for the trees. I need to see the trees before I see the forest. I'm going to look at it, but I need to see these first. I need all the context, the details, the minutia, before I then can look at a holistic big picture. I can see the big picture. I can see it holistically, but I want and need those details first. Routine, this is a common, everyone knows this about autism. We like routines. We get upset when we have to break routine. When I'm driving the familiar route to my mom's house, if I suddenly have to take a detour, I don't like that. Do I have a meltdown? No. But like, I don't like that. It is unsettling. I then become more prone to make mistakes because I am unsettled now. There's a change in something that I expected to go a particular way, a routine. hyperfixation social interests or special interests. Like, I really like the Viking Age, technology, obviously. I love exercise science and kinesiology, and now I like autism because I'm researching the crap out of it. I'm fairly solitary. I dislike and avoid like team sports. I don't care about sports at all. I avoided group projects all the time. In school, thankfully, I had awesome teachers that would literally let me do the entire group project on my own. Just myself. I don't have to deal with anybody else dropping the ball. I get my grade. Do I have to do more work? Sure. But I get to do it my way. And a funny story about that is that we had to do this group project where we had to make a whole magazine about World War I and stuff about it, and it took literally a whole weekend. But that project was supposed to take like 3 weeks, spread out through class time, in high school, and I just did it in a weekend, got it over with, and I just played on my Game Boy during class for 3 weeks, got an A, bam. I didn't play with other kids. Even at home, I would play just by myself, just like play video games, read a book, entertain myself. Or in my grandma's property where she has like 2 acres, I would just walk around the property, take sticks, hit things with sticks, and make little forts inside the bushes and just be by myself, climb the walnut tree, like by myself. Or parallel play, doing separate things together. And my whole family's like this. Like, I grew up this way, I'm still this way. Like, my fiance and I, we like to just read our own books, but in the same room together. Just being in the same room, but doing completely different things. I just like parallel play. Language. So, like, when you pick things up from movies or, like, words or phrases or things, overly repeating them. Like, I got called out by my fiance that I constantly oversaid oof and yeet all the time, because I picked it up and it just like echolalia. You repetitively say a phrase and it's a stim. You like saying it, and so I would say these things. I hate small talk. I think it's just conversation about unimportant things that people make during social interactions instead of actually interesting things that are fun to talk about. Now, I'm not talking about my special interests. I mean, like, nice weather we're having. Yeah, I checked it before I came here today. Why did you... Whatever. So what'd you do this weekend? Nothing you're going to want me to expound on in detail, so... Not much. Like... Hey, I saw you got that server wreck. What kind of things are you doing with that thing? Let me tell you. And then you chime in with, hey, yeah, I've been working on something like this too, and it does this. I'm like, oh, tell me about that. I might need to do something like that. Now we're having a conversation. Now, I work in IT, so that's actually a feasible thing that might actually happen. But, yeah. Being literal, challenges with what is actually said when the language doesn't match what is actually meant. Like, hey, it's really nice outside. Yes, it is. Oh, you're implying that you might want to go out and do something because the weather's nice? Well, you didn't say that. So I didn't comprehend that. Why are you upset now that I didn't understand that? Ah, autism. Social relatedness, mentalization, challenges with understanding what others are thinking and feeling. So if you struggle with cognitive empathy, mutual interests, you prefer to be with people who actually share your interests. Now, doesn't that just make sense though? Being considered different. Well, I mean, ostracization is like common with autism. Maybe it is the uncanny valley of just people see that something is not quite right with you, and so they treat you as an outsider. Hashtag childhood. Dialectical reciprocity. Challenges knowing when it is my turn to talk. Conversation on the phone. I hate talking on the phone. Absolutely hate it. But like even knowing when to break into a conversation, because I hate when people interrupt other people. It's my biggest pet peeve because it's also auditory overstimulation. I just can't process multiple audio tracks at once. I don't like when people talk over each other, and I can't stand talk shows for that reason. And when I'm in work meetings, sometimes I'll straight up leave a meeting if people are just talking over each other. I just can't stand it. No. Emotional reciprocity. I've had people flirt with me and I don't even know. Don't even notice. I mean, oh, that's a good problem to have. Like, whatever, but like, I don't even know. Auditory processing, I just mentioned that. Object permanence, it's not technically object permanence, as everyone likes to continually tell me on my ADHD video, but like, out of sight, out of mind, people, objects, yes. Maintaining relationships, I talk about all of that stuff in my ADHD videos, but like, it's difficult to even, if you don't remember that they're there, you don't forget to reach out. Time dilation, time blindness, it's been 6 months, it's been a year since you've seen them. Oh, wow, you pick it up right where you left off, and they think you're not friends because you haven't talked to them in a year. Nonverbal communication, body language, or you can actually be hyper aware of it, like I am, because of trauma and having to mask because of trauma. Like, traumatic abuse as a child, and now you have to read body cues and understand people's body language, because otherwise, if you don't know they're in a bad mood, you're about to get even worse abuse. So you might develop that. Mimicry and imitation. So this is actually something that gets autistic people in trouble quite a lot, which is sometimes unconscious. Mirroring other people's body language and tone because of masking, but also I've done this and it's embarrassing and I don't mean to do it and it's not intentional, but I've literally been talking to people and I picked up Australian or Asian broken English accents or just heavy Asian accents in normal conversation. I'm talking with somebody who has that accent and I pick up the accent and use it in the conversation. I don't know I'm doing it. And you can imagine how insensitive it appears to be talking to somebody, like, say, with an Asian accent who maybe English isn't their first language, and you mimic them, even unironically, and how that's perceived. It's not intentional. At least it's not with me. And so I try to be aware of that so I don't do it, but it happens, and it's just like, that's so weird. Masking in general, hiding and camouflaging your autistic behaviors and attributes just to try, ultimately to fail, to socially blend in. And boy, am I going to have plenty of research to quote on this in the future, but literally, this is killing autistic people. Like, the stress and anxiety and just the cost and toll of doing this literally takes years off of the life of the autistic people. Which is why unmasking is so important. Rigid thinking, being told I think too black and white, I'm too polar about my decisions, approaches, interests, all of that. Yeah, I'm all in. I do all or nothing. I go to the nth degree about anything I'm interested in. It always happens. And perfectionism. I need to have all the materials, all the tasks, everything set up, I need all the gear and equipment before I begin the task. I can't start imperfectly. That's really, that's why I got this, and now I can start networking. But then it's also like, thankfully I've started working through this because of my prior boss, working on software, Scrum, sprints, and like start with something that just does the bare minimum and then iteratively improve it over time. The MVP. And that's actually helped me in so many aspects of life, but that is one of the biggest problems that with me even getting started on things with executive dysfunction. I just can't start the project on the house because all these other things need to be perfect and lined up, and I need to gather the supplies, the materials, the plans. That is a big one. So yeah, that's like the daily experience. And I have like the funniest things from my family, like their quotes and perspectives about me, like failure to engage in simple social games. It has been my observation that he does not feel that social games have any value, and he chooses to not engage in them. Sometimes I think he does not pick up on these cues. I don't. He does seem awkward in social settings, doesn't know what is expected in the situation, does not focus on you during the conversation, usually busy with something concurrently. If I'm listening to you, I'm not making eye contact with you. It goes on. And then finally, the assessor. For my actual diagnosis, the actual paper summary, testing demonstrated that Bryan is performing at the average to very superior range of intellectual functioning compared to peers his age. However, in the areas of social communication and functioning, self and other rating, he is performing in the low to below average range. This would indicate a significant difference between his cognitive abilities and social abilities. The test results indicate significant levels of impairment in social and adaptive skills compared to peers his age. Bryan reported difficulties in social interactions, difficulties maintaining eye contact, among other things. He is able to manage daily responsibilities and prefers to have his days predictable and structured. His symptoms would most likely be classified under the level 1 severity because of his ability to speak in full sentences, maintain a daily routine independently, and general limited social engagement and relationships. So, I have a abnormally high ability to process information and learn, and yeah, my brain is really Ferrari brain. But my ability to communicate is trash. So I got diagnosed with level 1. So what's next? I'm learning a lot more about all of this. There is a lot to learn, including perspectives to learn, not just the white male perspective. So there is a lot more to learn on this, and I'm doing tons of research. I was putting off making this video because I really wanted to make a perfect video, tons of cited literature after reading all the books, all the sources and all that stuff. But, see that whole point on perfectionism I quoted before? I can't do that. So I'm basically holding my own channel hostage because I didn't want to make a video without it being perfect, and I can't do that. So I'm currently learning a lot more about it to talk about it in a more informed and structured and formal way. And likely I'm going to be making a lot more videos on this because this is a new hyperfixation of mine and it's my lived experience, and people do seem to like when I talk about these particular topics. So I'll likely be making more videos on autism, neurodivergence, and all of this type of stuff in the future. And maybe one day I'll also make my tech videos I said I was going to make. So we shall see. More stuff forthcoming. If you've lasted this long, wow, great endurance. I applaud you. And thank you. And I will catch you all in the next one. Bye.